Hello guys, your host Sahir is back with another video, and this time it will be about the basics of accounting. So without any much delay, let's get into it. In this video we will learn about the accounting equation and also about debit credit. Apart from that, to understand the relation of debit and credit with the components of accounting equation, we will learn double entry accounting system. So first of all, what is accounting equation? Accounting equation is all the assets that a company owns are equal to the sum of owner's equity and liabilities. Suppose there is a company called X Incorporation and it has 100,000 worth of asset. Then the sum of liabilities and the equity of that company will also be 100,000. Now how this works? To understand it, first of all we have to understand what is double entry system. Now double entry system is a system in which for every financial transaction, irrespective of its nature, will have two accounts. One will be debit and the other will be credit. Suppose a company has purchased an office equipment, say for example a printer. In that case, how this printer will be recorded? As you can understand, if it has purchased for cash, then cash will decrease. On the other hand, printer, that is an office equipment, will increase. So there is no single entry record. If you purchase the printer, according to the double entry system, you cannot just write a printer has been purchased worth 300. You have to consider both sides of the picture. At one end, cash is reducing. On the other hand, an office equipment is increasing. Now, what if the printer was purchased on credit? In that case, a creditor account or accounts payable would increase. On the other hand, an asset will increase, that is office equipment. Under double entry system, both sides of the equation will be balanced in every case. So just take a look in the equation. First of all, assume that the printer was purchased on credit. In that case, asset side will increase by 300. On the other hand, the liability and equity side will also increase by 300. So the equation is balanced. Now, what if the printer was purchased on cash? In that case, asset side would decrease by 300 because cash is decreasing by 300. But at the same time, asset would also increase by 300 because printer, that is an office equipment, would also increase by 300. And in that case also, both the side of the equation is balanced. So this is the basic idea of accounting equation and double entry system. So a question may arise, what is debit and what is credit? Basically, debit and credit are just two sides. Usually debit is the left side and credit is the right side. And every transaction will have at least one debit and one credit. Further, when we will solve complex problems, we will find that there can be multiple debits and multiple credits. But on every occasions, the balance of debit and credit for each of the transactions will be of equal amount. Now that you have the basic understanding of debit and credit and accounting equation, let's try to understand how and when assets, liabilities and equity will be debit and credit. If you take a look in the equation, you will find that assets are in the left side. On the other hand, liabilities and equity are on the right side. So if assets increase, they will be debit. And when assets are reduced or decreased, they will be credit. And liabilities are just the opposite. When liabilities increase, they will be credit. And when liabilities decrease, they will be debit. So if anybody asks you what is the balance of asset, you will say debit. And liability is credit. Simple and understandable. Now, what about equity? First of all, you should know that equity has four components. First one, is the capital. Second one is revenue. Third one is withdrawal, and the fourth one is expense. Among these four components, the first two components, capital and revenue, move with the equity, which means if these increase, owner's equity will increase. As you know, owner's equity is the right side of the equation. So if owner's equity increase, it will be credit. In that case, capital and revenue should also be credited when they are increased, and when capital and revenue decrease, they will be debit. And as far as the other two components are concerned, that is withdrawal and expenses, when withdrawal and expenses increases, they reduces the balance of owner's equity. So I think you can understand, when withdrawal and expenses increase, they will be debit, and when withdrawal and expenses decrease, they will be credit. So in a nutshell, when assets, withdrawal and expense increase, they will be debit, and when assets, withdrawal and expenses decrease, they will be credit. In contrast, when liabilities, capital and revenue increase, they will be credit, and when liabilities, capital and revenue decrease, they will be debit. And hopefully you have also understood debit is the left side and credit is the right side. What about the double entry system? For every financial transaction, when they record it, there will be at least a debit balance and a credit balance, and the amount of debit and credit will be same, and the amount of debit and credit will be equal. So guys and girls, hopefully you have understood these concepts. Now we will do a transaction analysis, which will help you to understand the whole concept. So guys, now I would like to do a transaction analysis. I would also like to suggest you to pause this video right now and grab a pen and paper and do the problem with me. Now we will do some transaction analysis. Our first transaction is investment by owner worth 15,000. Now what does investment by owner means? It means owner has invested, owner has put his own money to the organization. So it is capital of the business, and capital represents owner's equity because it is one of the four parts of owner's equity. As you have already studied, owner's equity has four sections: capital, revenue, withdrawal and expense. When capital increase, owner's equity increase, and at the same time cash is coming inside the organization, so cash is also increased. Cash is a kind of asset, so since asset is increasing, we have put cash, a new column under asset section, and we have put 15,000 under cash. And same thing for owner's equity, since capital has increased, it has increased owner's equity, so we have put 15,000 under owner's equity. Second transaction is purchase of equipment for cash. So let's try to analyze this transaction. What are the accounts that are involved in this transaction? First of all, as you can see, cash is affected, so cash is going to be outflowed. Therefore, under cash column we have deducted 7,000 from the previous cash balance. At the same time, equipment is increased by the same amount, 7,000. So we have put a new column under asset and we have added 7,000 under the equipments column. Here I should drag your attention to the liabilities and owner's equity section. This transaction does not affect any kind of liability or equity, so we haven't done anything in that section. You will find similar type of problems where there will only have effects in the liabilities and equity section, and in those transactions we will not do anything in the assets section. So let's move to the next transaction, and in those transactions we will not do anything in the assets section. So let's move to the next transaction, that is purchase of supplies on credit worth 1600. Now what is meant by on credit? On credit means when we purchase something on credit, we don't have to pay it right now, we will pay it later. Okay, so the amount is called accounts payable. We will pay it at later time, and when we don't pay it right now, it is already due, and when it is already due and we do not pay it right now, we keep it for later, it is called a liability. So under liability section we have put a new column called accounts payable, and we have added accounts payable with 1600, and at the same time we have purchased supplies. So supplies is one kind of asset, and since asset has increased, so under asset section we have put a new column called supplies, and we have added 1600. I hope these are understandable to you. Let's move to the next transaction. Services provided for cash, and the amount is 1200. So on cash means cash is involved in this transaction. So let's go to the cash column. In the number 4 row we have added 1200 under cash, because service provided for cash, that means cash is coming in. Selling a good entitles us to charge the good to the buyer. Same way, when we provide service, this service entitles us to charge some certain amount of money to those whom we have provided the service. So this is a revenue generating transaction, and when we generate revenue, we increase owner's equity, because owner's equity has 4 sections: capital, revenue, withdrawal and expense, and when revenue increases, owner's equity increases. So under owner's equity section we have added 1200 as the service revenue. Let's move to the next transaction. Purchase of advertising on credit. On credit means we have not paid cash right now, we will pay cash at later time. On credit means no cash is involved. At the same time, it also means we have increased liabilities, and it is the same kind of liability, accounts payable. So under accounts payable column we have added 250. At the same time, what is advertising? Advertising is a kind of expense. An expense is part of owner's equity, and when expenses increase, owner's equity decrease. So under owner's equity we have deducted 250 because advertising expense has increased by 250. Let's move to the next transaction. Service provided for cash and on credit. Total amount of service provided is 3500. Service provided, that means revenue has increased, and when revenue increases, it increases owner's equity. So under owner's equity we have added 3500, and we have already received 1500 amount of cash. So under cash column we have added 1500, and on credit, that means we have not received. Here in the earlier problem we had accounts payable, we purchased something and we did not pay. Here we provided some service and we have not been paid, so we will receive the cash later. When we are entitled to receive some amount of cash at later time, it is called accounts receivable or trade receivable, and it is an asset. So under asset section we have put another column, that is accounts receivable, and under accounts receivable we have added 2000 because we will receive it at later time. So accounts receivable has increased, which increases assets. Let's move to the next transaction. Payment of services. Rent 600, salaries 900, utilities 200. So expense is part of owner's equity. When expenses increase,
owner's equity decrease. So first of all, let's deduct these expenses from owner's equity. In the owner's equity section, you can see rent, salaries and utilities expense has been deducted from owner's equity. At the same time, how we are going to pay this? By cash. So let's move to the assets section. Under cash, in the number 7 row, we have deducted 1700. That is sum of the rent, salaries and utilities, and we have deducted the amount under cash. Let's move to the next transaction. Payment of accounts payable, and the amount is 250. So what does it mean? Earlier in transaction number 3 and in transaction number 5, we have incurred some expenses, but we did not pay them at that time. We kept them for future. Right now in transaction number 8, we are going to pay some of them, and the amount is 250. So first of all, cash is going to be paid. Cash is going to go out of the organization, so cash is decreasing. So under cash, we will deduct cash by 250. At the same time, liabilities, because we are paying out the liabilities, so liabilities is going to decrease. So under accounts payable section, we will also deduct 250. And in the balancing row, you can see we have deducted 250 from the previous balance 1850, and the new balance is 1600. I should drag your attention at this point. If you add all the assets, that is 8750, 1600, 7200, you get 19350. At the same time, if you add liabilities and equity, that is 1600 and 17,750, the amount is 1935. So, as I told you earlier, accounting equation says assets are equal to liabilities and equity. Here, sum of all the assets are equal to the sum of liabilities and equities. So, let's move to the next transaction. Receipt of cash on account 600. Earlier in 6th transaction, we had service provided on credit. Amount was 2000. So we put it under accounts receivable. The amount we will receive later. Now in 9th transaction, we are receiving some of them. So when we receive some payment, that was put under accounts receivable. So now we have to deduct it from accounts receivable, because the accounts receivable amount is being decreased. At the same time, what we are receiving? We are receiving cash. So cash is going to increase. So under cash column, we have increased cash, and under accounts receivable section, we are decreasing 600 from the previous balance 2000. So now let's move to the 10th and final transaction. Withdrawal of cash by owner, and the amount is 1300. So withdrawal of cash. So cash is involved, and because it is withdrawal, so the owner is taking cash from the organization. So cash is going to be decreased, and at the same time withdrawal is going to increase. And we know withdrawal is part of owner's equity, and when withdrawal is increased, owner's equity is decreased. So under owner's equity section, we will deduct this 1300 from owner's equity, and under cash, because cash is also going to decrease, we are decreasing cash under the cash column, and we get the balance. And if you add all the assets amount and the liability and equity amount, they will be same. And here you can see the summary of the transactions. For every transaction that involves owner's equity, I have put a small note. In exams, if you are asked this type of problems, for every owner's equity transaction, you should put this type of short notes.
So viewers, hopefully this video has helped you to understand the basic components of accounting. In the next video, we will try to understand the recording process of accounting, and we'll solve some problems. If my lectures are helping you, please consider subscribing this channel, and do share this channel with your friends. So guys, do write some comments, whatever issues you have, whatever you want to study, whatever problems you are facing with my lectures, and hopefully we will meet in the next session.